Imagine spending tens of years behind bars after being wrongfully found guilty of a crime, just to be unexpectedly freed because of how new information or a revised verdict surfaced. After spending so much time behind bars for something you didn't do, the sensation of victory must be amazing. The experiences of innocent people who were wrongfully imprisoned have changed their lives permanently, and even though they might never regain what was taken from them, many of them are thankful for second opportunities at life outside of prison. As uplifting as it is to read about exonerated prisoners returning home to joyfully reunite with loved ones, these amazing tales might also be tinged with sadness and the years missed while in prison. Number 1. David Ronta. Despite passing a polygraph test and not being the shooter, David Ronta was found guilty of murder in 1991 after 6 witnesses recognized him in a lineup. To his dismay, he was sentenced to 37.5 years to life in prison. The defense's prediction that another man would be exonerated and settle with the city of Fresh York for $6.4 million over 2 decades later, in 2013, after fresh evidence about police misconduct during his trial surfaced. In addition, he received an additional $8 million payout from the court for claims he made against them alleging unjust conviction. Now that there have been numerous cases of wrongful convictions in the state of New York involving persons who were wrongly accused and found guilty, it is crucial to acknowledge the injustices and make sure that similar errors are not made again. Number 2. John Bunn. African-American man named John Bunn tragically and unjustly served more than 16 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Even though he was only 14 at the time of his conviction, justice would not be established until 2018, resulting in his subsequent acquittal on all charges. The tale of Bunn is one of tenacity, bravery, and fortitude. He maintained his innocence the entire time he was detained, never losing faith that he would one day be set free. The evidence against him was exceedingly flimsy and was only supported by the testimony of others. He was suspected of murdering a cop during a heist while also hurting another. The victim who lived provided a physical description of his assailants. Despite the fact that he did not fit the description given by the hurt officer, he was nonetheless detained. After serving 16 years in prison, he was transferred to a penitentiary facility. After that, in 2006, he was granted parole for his good behavior. He nevertheless pursued justice to clear his name, after fighting for his rights while serving years in prison. Finally, Bunn's conviction was reversed, and he was declared legally innocent. When word that he had been cleared of all charges reached John Bunn, he was in disbelief as his mind struggled to accept this new reality. Years of injustice came to an end when the truth came out. John experienced a tremendous sense of ease. Number 3. Kirsten Lobato. Nevada native Kirsten Lobato was falsely arrested and found guilty of killing Duran Bailey in Las Vegas in 2001. Despite receiving a 40 to 100 years sentence at her initial trial, fresh information would prompt a retrial when she was subsequently charged with lesser counts and given a 13 to 45-year term. When she was 18 years old, a man attempted to assault her, and she responded by stabbing him in the crotch with a pocket knife. When a homeless guy was discovered dead in July of that same year, Lobato was charged with murder. She continued to refute this charge, but officers just wouldn't listen. She kept on appealing, but her petitions were denied several times. Then in December of 2017, after gaining significant notoriety due to the publication of exonerating evidence, the Nevada Department of Corrections was instructed to release Lobato. She was, however, held back for an additional year due to an unrelated event. However, when examined again in January 2019, the same judge later discharged him, citing time served. She would spend a total of 16 years in prison as a result of a false accusation, and although she was relieved to be free, her experience serves as a poignant reminder of the flaws in the criminal justice system and how easily innocent people can be found guilty of crimes they did not commit. Number 4. Curtis Flowers. In 1996, Curtis Giovanni Flowers was falsely found guilty of 4 murders. He was then exonerated by the Mississippi Supreme Court in 2019 following multiple trials, numerous appeals, and a 22-year prison sentence. Naturally, the unlucky man would spend more than 2 decades in prison before it was established that he was innocent. He sobbed in relief when he was eventually freed because, for him, it had been a long and exhausting struggle against the unfair justice system. Flowers' 4 deaths that had occurred at the Tardy Furniture Store in Winona, Mississippi, would lead to the conviction of a father of 2. The trial was full of contradictions, with key witnesses changing their testimonies repeatedly, facts from the scene being overlooked and ignored, and insufficient evidence being used to convict Flowers. The crime had taken place during a robbery in which 4 people lost their lives and 2 were seriously injured. After years of defending his innocence and going through numerous trials, the Mississippi Supreme Court eventually overturned his judgment in 2019. Since then, Flowers has been featured in several documentaries, received awards and honors for his bravery, and has even started to advocate for criminal justice reform. The court would eventually rule that prosecutors had broken the Constitution by using preemptive challenges to exclude African Americans from the jury pool. For too long, people of color have been unfairly convicted with scant to no evidence, and the Curtis Flowers case serves as a reminder that the American justice system can be deficient and needs to be improved. After 22 years of an incorrect conviction, Curtis Giovanni Flowers was finally exonerated in 2019. His happy tears served as a monument to the success he had battled for all those years. A magnificent illustration of how justice can still triumph even in the face of overwhelming odds. Number 5, Devontae Sanford. In Detroit, Michigan, 2 blocks from his home, Devontae Sanford was falsely convicted of 4 murders back in March 2008. Despite the fact that Vincent Smothers quickly made a confession to the crime, prosecutors chose not to charge him with those particular murders, which sparked a years-long campaign for justice by individuals who believe they are innocent. Finally, in July 2016, when Sanford was released from prison and became a free man, their efforts would come full circle. The circumstances surrounding Devontae's case caused several issues with the criminal justice system to arise. His case was highly complex, including high-level drug dealers, minor offenders, and law enforcement officials on both sides of the aisle. It is a monument to how justice can be misapplied, but it also offers encouragement that erroneous convictions may occasionally be overturned. Devontae Sanford was falsely convicted of all 4 murders in 2008, but because to his attorney's work, the conviction was reversed 8 years later. Even while this is ultimately a triumph of justice, it serves as a reminder to everyone that we must keep working to make the criminal justice system more equitable in order to prevent similar injustices in the future. Sanford spent more than 8 years in prison due to an unfair charge, so it is impossible to imagine him feeling anything other than ecstatic pleasure when he was finally released on July 19, 2016. He was appreciative to everyone who worked tirelessly to reintegrate him into society in a dignified manner. Despite all the agony he threw while being innocent, Devontae had hope for the future. It highlighted how powerful endurance and fortitude can be even under the most trying circumstances. Something that will always act as motivation for numerous further innocent persons who have been falsely accused around the world. Number 6, Deborah Milkey. Deborah Milk's conviction for murdering her 4-year-old son Christopher was erroneous. Despite the fact that neither of the 2 men testified against her and agreed that she was not present at the scene of the murder, James Lynn Stiers and Roger Mark Scott were detained for the crime in December 1989. According to Scott, Milkey was the mastermind. A 3-judge panel at the Ninth Circuit Court of the United States unanimously overturned Deborah Milk's conviction in 2013. The judges emphasized a number of problems with the prosecution's case, including the fact that Noel Levy, the prosecuting attorney, concealed a personnel record from the defense. Additionally, concerns regarding Detective Armando Saldate Jr.'s extensive history of wrongdoing would be addressed. The judge would formally drop all charges against Deborah Milk with prejudice in March 2015. Despite having served more than 25 years in jail, she was ultimately vindicated and released on a $250,000 bond. Despite two men acknowledging that she was not there at the incident, the case of her wrongful conviction serves as a sharp reminder of the injustice that can occur inside the criminal justice system. She was found guilty in 1990 as a result of a detective's misbehavior and suppressed evidence. This persisted for 25 years until being invalidated by an appeals court. After being cleared because correct legal procedures weren't followed throughout the prosecution. Deborah Milk serves as a reminder that many innocent people are likely languishing in jail as a result of the legal system's failure to protect them. Deborah Milk must have been overpowered when she heard those three miraculous words, "all charges dismissed," after spending nearly 25 years in prison for something she didn't do. Joy that is deeply tinged with grief for both herself and all the other innocents who have endured similar atrocities throughout history without ever experiencing true freedom. Number 7. Alfred Dwayne Brown. Alfred Dwayne Brown was wrongfully found guilty in October 2005 of killing a police officer with a gun and given the death penalty. Subsequent investigations would show that the prosecution had withheld crucial evidence that would have supported Brown's defense team's alibi. Due to this discrepancy, the conviction was overturned and sent back to Harris County for a retrial by the state's highest criminal court in late 2014. Due to insufficient evidence being provided against Brown and flaws with the prosecution's evidence, the prosecution was unable to proceed with their case, ultimately resulting in Brown being released from prison after 9 years. This lost Brown nearly 10 years of his life. Alfred Brown's release from prison in June 2015 was celebrated by family members and friends, and it was an emotional day for everyone who had fought for justice during the course of his trial, including Brown himself. It seemed like something too good to be true when prosecutors finally decided that there was insufficient evidence against him to proceed with a retrial after nearly 10 years of being wrongfully imprisoned on false charges that could have resulted in his death due to capital punishment laws at the time of sentencing. In response to these developments, during the exoneration hearing inside the courtroom, Brown expressed sincere gratitude to those involved in bringing about this momentous occasion. He said, "I can never thank you or pay back what I owe," which perfectly captured how relieved he was. Brown also maintained his modest demeanor despite the distressing circumstances that he had faced over the previous few years. Number 8. Luis Vargas. Luis Vargas fought for more than 10 years for someone to listen before being erroneously found guilty of 3 assaults. His 16-year legal battle would ultimately succeed when the California Innocence Project took up his case and pushed officials to test DNA evidence after he was initially sentenced to 55 years for a crime he didn't commit. Even though Vargas filed many appeals from 1999 to 2002, a judge would overturn the conviction based on the victim's identification and police lineups because it would now point to a different suspect. Until 2019, when he would be cleared due to fresh evidence, justice eluded him. Vargas's case serves as evidence of how challenging it may be to overturn a guilty conviction because requests for judicial relief are frequently turned down without review as a result of administrative problems. The case also emphasizes the value of DNA evidence in securing justice and the urgency with which such evidence should be tested. One can only imagine how relieved and appreciative he must have felt when Luis learned of his exoneration in 2019 following the agonizingly protracted legal battle against false accusations after fighting for many years for someone to listen when no one would believe or give credence to his pleas of innocence. His lips were twitching when he heard that he was a free man and he burst into tears, so hearing that you are free must have been nothing short of freeing. After being freed, he asked his mother to buy him a hamburger so they could eat together, showing how joyful and hopeful he was to have finally been reunited with his family who had supported him during his journey. Number 9. Clifford Williams Jr. Clifford Williams Jr. and his nephew Nathan Myers were eventually freed after 42 years of being wrongfully imprisoned when Duval County prosecutors filed a report from the Conviction Integrity Unit that found no evidence supporting their convictions. Despite the fact that both men had been tried for murder in 1976 after Jeanette Williams was found dead and her girlfriend Nina Marshall named them as the killers despite 40 alibi witnesses testifying to the contrary, the physical evidence showed that the shots had come from outside through a bedroom window. The defense attorney would disregard this information during the trial. Despite having 40 witnesses testify in their favor, the two men were nevertheless found guilty. They would have received the death penalty for a crime they did not commit. However, Judge Cliff Shepard finally reversed this judgment because there was insufficient evidence used to convict them. This historic event gives many people waiting for future releases from prison hope and serves as an uplifting reminder that justice may triumph against all odds. When Clifford Williams Jr. learned that he would be released from prison after serving such a lengthy sentence, he was overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he got the news, and he hugged those who had stood by him for the past 40 years. He spent a lot of time behind bars fighting for his rights, but his faith never faltered, which is a witness to how deeply valuable that freedom truly is. Number 10. Richard Jones. Richard Jones was found guilty of an aggravated robbery that took place in a Walmart parking lot in Roland Park, Kansas, in 1999, despite the fact that he had an alibi. Despite his close likeness to another guy, eyewitnesses were able to identify Jones as the robber. In order to qualify as an aggravated robbery, the offense entailed a guy trying to steal a woman's pocketbook, during which she fell and scraped her knees. Jones was apprehended because a witness noted his vehicle plate number, which directed authorities to his house. After being falsely accused despite having numerous witnesses attest that he was present at his girlfriend's birthday party, Jones spent 17 years in prison before discovering the Midwest Innocence Project, which eventually found the real Ricky Lee Amos, who had a striking resemblance to Jones and had previously resided at the address associated with the crime. Due to this evidence, Jones' conviction was quashed, and he was awarded a certificate of innocence along with $1.1 million in compensation for lost wages, legal bills, and other expenses. He was granted counseling and health benefits for up to 2 years, and his arrest record was wiped. After 17 years, Jones was at last a free man, and his reaction revealed how happy he was. One can only imagine how liberating it felt when all charges were dropped against him after such a challenging road through unfair incarceration and court fights. After all, no amount of money can ever replace your freedom, and the outcome in Jones's case is genuinely priceless. There may still be sentiments of resentment or even hatred at what had happened throughout the process. These people, although the odds were stacked against them, were able to find justice in the same system that proved otherwise to them. For more exciting stories, make sure you like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.